Hai Zehra, Hai Zehra, Zehra, Hai Zehra.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. In the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate, we continue tonight with the speech that was delivered by Lady Fatima, peace be upon her, the Lady of Light, the Lady of Heaven, the daughter of the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. In this speech that she delivered, it's recorded to be one of the most eloquent speeches that were ever given in the Arabic language. And it's not a speech that she prepared for beforehand. Lady Fatima went and where the people were gathered, and she spoke on the spot without preparation. And she came up with this very eloquent speech. If you read in Arabic, you'll understand how eloquent it is. There's a lot of commentaries that were written on it, and the words that she used and the style that she used was something that we can find very little of in comparison with what she said. And in this speech, the Lady Fatima, just like her father and just like her husband Imam Ali alayhi salam, she didn't just want to fight for something that's worldly. They took away her land, they took away her inheritance, but it wasn't the land and the inheritance that she was really after. She saw her role as a continuation of the role of her father and messenger. The Prophet didn't come to this world seeking this world. He wasn't seeking wealth, he wasn't seeking power, he wasn't seeking to become someone who is dominant in the physical realm. He could have had that. All the money from the Muslims and the trades and all that, they were under his control. He could have built himself a palace, he could have had servants, he could have had everything he wanted. But that's not why he was sent to us, and that's not how his nature was. He knows that these are not the things that make you a human being. These are not the things that are valuable in life. You could have a palace, you could have servants, you could have everything. But in reality, you have nothing when you lose yourself and you lose God. In one of the du'as we have, the Imam addresses God saying, "What has he lost? The one who has found you. And what has he found? The one who has lost you." If you lose God and you lose that reality and that purity and that truth, then no matter what you have, you've lost everything. You have nothing. And the contrary is true. If you have God, then you've found everything. Because this is the internal state that you have. You're balanced internally, you're detached from things, you don't feel like you belong to anything. And nothing has control over you. You have control over yourself and everything around you. So Syeda Zehra alayhi salam comes and speaks to these people, and she begins by explaining things to them step by step. Because her father just passed away, and these people have turned around and defied his teachings, went against his teachings, took her right from her that was given to her. So there is a problem at the core of these people. There's something rotten inside of them. It seems like they haven't learned everything or haven't applied what they learned from her father, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when we read her speech, it becomes very obvious that this person was not a worldly person. She didn't go out fighting, give me my land, give me, this is mine, this belongs to me. No. She spent a great deal explaining to people why there is a God, why her father was selected and chosen and sent to them, and why certain religious rituals and things were revealed to them, like prayer and fasting and zakat. She was teaching these individuals, trying to awaken their hearts. Now, these were Muslims as well. It's not like they were completely dark-hearted. No. They fought with the Prophet, they wanted to spread the message of Islam, and they supported the Prophet, and the religion of God was supported by these individuals. It's not like they were completely evil. But a lot of them were not so pure that when they came and they were tested by this, the hardest test is the test of power and then wealth. We run after power, we run after control. Whenever we have a chance to gain power over something or someone, we take that. This is unfortunately one of the human vices. This is what we have. And wars around the world occur because of this. One country wants to dominate another. They want to control that other country. They want to have more land. They want to have more wealth. And throughout history, empires attacked other empires and obliterated them, massacred them, killed them, removed them from the face of earth. Humans. Just killed. Why? Because they wanted to expand their territory. They wanted to expand their control. They wanted to expand their power. This is something, unfortunately, that's in the human nature. So these individuals are no exception. They became Muslim. They accepted the message of the Prophet. They converted. They helped in making the message succeed. But then after the Prophet passed away, when the Prophet was there, nobody can contest the power, right? He's the messenger of Allah. He's the one in charge. But as soon as God took him to him, that's when the test really, really came and showed who's the person whose faith has entered his heart truly. And Allah in the Quran, many times, He speaks to these people during the Prophet's life. And He tells them, don't claim that you're believers. We're going to test you with your money, with your wealth, with your families, so that you can really show us whether you're believers or not. You can't just claim that I'm a good person. When it comes down to a situation where you can either have the option A or option B, option A being the right thing and B the bad thing, what you choose at that moment shows what kind of person you really are. So the Prophet passes away. Immediately, they fight over control, they fight over power, and they take everything that belonged to the Prophet from his family. Syeda Zehra comes out, and she begins with her speech. I mentioned a few parts of it yesterday, and today I'll continue with a few other segments just so we can see what Lady Fatima alayhi salam was trying to tell us and show us. So Syeda Zehra talks about God sending the Prophet. She describes her father in many different ways, and I'm not going to mention everything in the speech that she gave, but she said that God saw that the people had many different religions. فَرَأَى الْأُمَمْ فِرَقًا فِي أَدْيَانِهَا عُكَّفًا عَلَى نِيرَانِهَا عَابِدَةً لِأَوْثَانِهَا. God saw that the people had many different religions, worshipping idols, and in reality, they were burning from inside, denying the existence of God when they truly knew that God does exist. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is Syeda Zehra saying, فَأَنَارَ اللَّهُ بِمُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ ظُلَمَهَا. God lightened or sent light with the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to remove the darkness in these people. So these people were living in darkness. And God sent this messenger with light to lighten up their hearts and their souls. وَكَشَفَ عَنِ الْقُلُوبِ بُهَمَهَا. And He removed from their hearts those dirty things, those pollutants that are covering their hearts and making them not see the truth. وَجَلَّ عَنِ الْأَبْصَارِ غُمَمَهَا. And He uncovered their eyes from seeing the truth and seeing what is really worthless in this world and the hereafter. Then she says, وَقَامَ فِي النَّاسِ بِالْهِدَايَةِ. He came amongst the people and began to guide them. وَأَنْقَذَهُمْ مِنَ الْغَوَايَا. And He saved them from their troubles. وَبَصَّرَهُمْ مِنَ الْعَمَايَا. And He gave them eyes to see when they were blind. وَهَدَاهُمْ إِلَى الدِّينِ الْقَوِيمِ وَدَعَاهُمْ إِلَى الطَّرِيقِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. He guided them to the righteous religion, and he called them upon the middle path. He called them to follow the path. Obviously, the Prophet doesn't force anyone, right? This is a choice that we have to make. So Sayyidah Zahra is saying that my father was sent for these reasons. You guys were living in darkness. You guys had misery in your lives. My father was sent in order to remove these miseries from you. And of course, the Prophet came and he claimed that he's bringing back the final religion, the religion that was revealed to Adam and Ibrahim and all the other messengers together, which was the religion of Islam. The religion of Islam is supposed to be the universal religion. No connection to any individual, only God is revered, and the absolute truth is what we're looking for. This is what the Prophet came to re-establish. Then Sayyidah Zahra says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then took my father away to him in a very merciful way, and he made him relax from the tiredness and the troubles of this world. The angels held him up and took him, and he went back to the forgiving Lord. So then she praises her father and she sends her blessings upon him, and then she turns around to the people that were sitting there and she tells them, you, ibadallah, O worshippers of God, are the ones who were spoken to by God. And you are the ones who are carrying this message and religion that God has sent to my father, through my father to you. So you're also messengers. You're also responsible as individuals because you are the ones who lived with my father. You're the ones who heard his words. You're the ones who heard the revelation whenever Gabriel came down and spoke to him. He spoke to you and you memorized these things. So you are carrying this message and therefore you are also messengers in one sense. That makes you responsible individuals. وَأُمَنَاءُ اللَّهِ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. You are the ones who God put the trust in to carry this message to others. وَبُلَغَاؤُهُ إِلَى الْأُمَمِ. And you are the messengers of God to the other nations. So the Sayyidah Zahra is trying to tell these people, look, you guys have a very big responsibility. You're not like anyone else who existed in history or who's going to exist in the future. You are the ones who are living at the time when the messenger of God was sent. You were living with him. You were seeing him walking. You were hearing him talking. You were with him every single day. This will never happen again in history. So you are responsible as individuals, even more responsible than anyone else that's going to come in the future. And that's true. When it comes to our scholars and talking about how much people will be forgiven, they say that those who lived at the time of the Prophet, the chance of God forgiving them because of the wrongdoings that they've done is much less than the chance that God will forgive us. Because we did not witness the Prophet. We didn't live at his time. We are living over 1,000 years after. So we weren't there to hear him. We're not able to ask him questions directly. Therefore, God's mercy upon us and his forgiveness is much more than it is on those who actually lived at his time. Because they had a responsibility. They were supposed to get that message correct and pass it down to their generations. But instead, what did they do? The final religion, instead of being so careful and so pious in passing it on to the next generations, a lot of them chose to continue their lives as normal and to go back to their bad habits and to prefer to get power and wealth over anything else. Very short-sighted, very selfish, very egocentric. God's divine message was completely distorted because of this. So Sayyidah Zahra here is coming and telling them, look, it's not just a matter of my land or my right that you took away. This is the religion of God that you're carrying and you're ruining and destroying. And this is what we see amongst us right now. How many differences do we see between the Muslims? A lot of questions that we have that go unanswered. A lot of our history has been distorted. A lot of Muslims has been killed. They've occupied lands unjustly. They've killed other people innocently as well. All of this was a continuation of that mistake and those wrongdoings that these people initiated at that time. Because once you say, okay, I'm taking the Prophet's land, I'm taking it away from his family, I'm changing this, I'm changing that, if these are the closest people to the Prophet that did this, it makes it much easier for those who were farther away to do the same and even worse. So Lady Fatima is trying to wake them up in this situation. Wake up from your blindness and choose what's right for you to do. And then she tells them that God sent the Quran to you, it has admonishments in it, it has advice for you to follow, it's full of light, it's this, it's that. And then she talks about the rituals. She says that فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْهِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. God gave you faith in order to purify you from shirk. Because you're attached to everything in this world, God gave you this faith in order to free you from this attachment. To free you and make you better people. This is why God gave you Iman. God doesn't need your faith. He doesn't need your belief. One of God's names is Al-Ghani, the one who's rich, who's needless. He doesn't need anyone to worship Him. He doesn't need anyone to talk to Him. He doesn't need anyone to do anything for Him. God is self-sufficient, needless of anything else. So He gave us faith for our own sake, because He doesn't want us to live in this misery of being attached to things and suffering and having a difficult life. He gave us Iman. So she's telling them, Iman came to purify you individuals. And instead of taking it and taking advantage of it, you end up falling in the same mistakes that you were in and completely ignored these teachings that it came with. And this is because everyone has a free will. Just because you lived with the Prophet and you saw him and you hung out with him from morning to night doesn't make you any good person. If you don't decide to change, even if there were 1,000 prophets around you, you want to do the wrong thing, you end up doing the wrong thing. You want to be a bad person, you're going to be a bad person. It doesn't matter how many prophets are around you. This is a decision that you have to make yourself. Yes, did it lead to ruining the religion to a certain degree? Did it make us, the future generations, suffer? Yes. But this is the nature of the world. God can't remove their free will just to preserve a certain religion or certain faith. Everybody has a test. Everybody has a trial. Our test is to follow whatever teachings that are left and that we understand are right in order to save ourselves. This is our test, because we didn't receive the complete religion the way it was revealed to the Prophet. So because of what they did, our test has changed as well. We're not as responsible anymore, we're not as accountable anymore, but we are to a certain degree. Then she goes on and says, وَالصَّلَاةِ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. Now she's giving some reasons of why God revealed these things. So Iman, to purify you from shirk, and prayer was revealed to you and made obligatory upon you in order to remove arrogance from you. Now, sometimes we might realize that Sayyidah Zehra is using specific traits and characteristics of individuals, because what these people were doing was out of arrogance and pride. When God revealed prayer to humble them, when you pray to God, you admit to yourself before God that you are nothing before Him. You have no control over your destiny, you have no control over your life, you have no control over your death, you don't have control over anything. Yes, you can work, yes, you can eat, but in reality, we're helpless. God is the absolute being. Everything comes from Him, everything is under His control. So when you pray, that's supposed to humble you and make you realize that. وَالزَّكَاةِ تَزْكِيَةً لِلنَّفْسِ. He made zakat, which is a tax that people had to pay, in order to purify the souls. Why? Because giving money is a very difficult thing. You make money, it's very difficult for you to give a portion of that to those who are in need. So this also humbles you, detaches you from money as well, makes you realize that the world is not just about wealth and power, not about pride and arrogance, not about control. So God gives you prayer to humble you, remove arrogance and pride from your heart. He gives you zakat in order to purify your nafs from attachment to wealth. وَنَمَاءً فِي الرِّزْقِ. God is teaching you, the more you give, the more you get. If you give a little, you will receive a lot. This is something that we have to learn as well. This is a spiritual truth. وَالصِّيَامَ تَثْبِيتًا لِلْإِخْلَاصِ. And fasting in order to make sincerity stable and firm in your heart. Why is sincerity tied to fasting and not to salat, for example? Because in prayer, you can pray in front of people and you can do it out of, showing off, right? If you pray in front of someone, you might not be doing it for God. You might want people seeing you that you're praying and think that you're a good person. But fasting does not involve making an action, right? Praying is making an action. You're standing, you're bowing, you're prostrating, you're moving your head, you're moving your lips, you're doing something. In fasting, there's nothing that you're doing. It's actually no action. You're not eating, you're not drinking. So there's nothing that you're doing that can show in front of people. Nobody would know you're fasting if you're just walking down the street, right? But if you're praying, everybody knows you're praying. So no one will know you're fasting until you tell them that you're fasting. This is, one joke they talk about a person who acts like he's a believer, she's a believer, came to the masjid and was praying with a very loud voice and very beautiful voice. And this person comes by and says, MashaAllah, MashaAllah, what a wonderful voice, what a wonderful prayer. And this guy turns around to him and says, I'm fasting as well. To make sure that he doesn't, because he can't show him that he's fasting, but he wants him to know that I'm fasting. So you have to say it. So fasting is the most sincere worship that you can do. And in one of the hadiths that we have, God says that al-sawmu li, fasting is mine, wa ana ujzi bih, and I'm the one who rewards it personally. Because when you fast, it's really the most pure form of worship, because nobody would know. You can go along your own day. That's why God says that that's for me, purely for me. There's no room for it to be shared with anyone else, unless you say it. وَالصِّيَامَ تَثْبِيتًا الْإِخْلَاص. So sincerity is a very important thing that has to enter our hearts and our minds. وَالْحَجَّ تَشْهِيدًا لِلدِّينِ. Hajj pilgrimage was revealed to strengthen religion. When all the people gather around together in this pilgrimage, wearing the same clothes. In Hajj, when you're performing the Hajj, you're not allowed to wear different clothes. You all wear the white clothes. Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, whether you're from this country or that country, you all have the same dress on. You're all equal. There's no segregation in terms of your class, your economical class, even men and women. Women can't cover their faces in Hajj. Everyone there is supposed to be in equal stature. It strengthens the bond and it reminds us as human beings that we are all the same. Just because I own a palace and you own a hut doesn't make me any better than you. Because we can come here and if we all dress the same, nobody can tell the difference between us. In reality, if we remove all these veils and all these imaginations that we have in our mind, oh, he has a car, therefore he's a good person, that's just in our mind. This is what society wants us to believe. Your value is how much you own. That's how much value you have. If you have the newest phone, that makes you a better person, a cooler person. We invent these things. We invent these values. Going to Hajj and witnessing that removes all these inventions and imaginations that we've made up as societies. And it reminds us that no, we're all the same thing. It's no different between me and you. But someone is trying to make us think that if I own this, or if I have that, or I walk this way, or I speak this way, or I listen to this, or I watch that, that makes me a better person. Who puts this criteria? Who puts these values? If you come to think about it, why should you feel you're valuable the way other people are saying you're valuable? Why don't you see value in your own self? Why does someone else have to validate you and tell you how to be a good person or how you should be someone recognizable in society? We don't need anyone to tell us that. If I decide to wear, dress up in a certain way, if I decide to live my life in a certain way, there's no problem with that. I'm happy this way, and this is how I want to live. If I want to live without a car and I want to go on my bike, this is my choice. It doesn't make me any less of a person than you are. And this is something that I really learned when I went to different countries and I lived in different countries. Every society has their own standard. For example, things that people do in Germany, if they do in the US, the Americans will look down upon them. What kind of lifestyle is this? But the Germans are happy with it. And the other way is also true. Americans do things that Germans think are terrible. Because in their mind as a society, in order for you to have value, you must do 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what makes you a valuable individual. But by seeing these differences, you realize that these are things that we've made up as human beings. The true value is that you do not feel the need for anyone else to validate you. I'm happy the way I am. I make my own choice. I make my own decision. And the way you think about me or validate me does not matter to me at all. This is the kind of mentality that Hajj at least teaches us and puts in our minds and hearts. Then she talks about justice. تنسيقا والعدل تنسيقا للقلوب. Justice holds the hearts together. If you have a corrupt country, a corrupt system, a corrupt social system or legal system, then people are always going to be in fear, and they're not going to feel like they're represented. They're not going to feel like they have been given their rights, and they don't feel like they're able to live in this society. And remember, Syeda Zehra here is specifically choosing things to show them where they went wrong. If you take someone else's land and you make up an excuse to steal that, then you've destroyed the whole legal justice system. You steal one land here, you'll take that other person's right, you'll start justifying taking everyone else's right. It only takes you one mistake to make, one transgression, and you open up the door for all of the injustice to happen. وَطَاعَتَنَا نِظَامًا لِلْمِلَّةِ. Then she begins to talk about obeying the imams, that God obligated upon the people, or made it incumbent upon the people, to obey the imams in order to create a structure and system in the nation so that things are not chaotic. And she goes on and on with a lot of these wonderful teachings and clarifying to the minds of these individuals, even though they are, in a sense, they've wronged her so much. Usually when someone does something wrong to you, you don't come and say, well, let me go and educate this individual. It's not the first thing that comes to mind. You feel like you want to fight back, you want to get your right back, you want to yell, you want to scream, you want to be aggressive. But Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam teach us that if someone wrongs you, then the first thing that you should try doing is try educating them. Try teaching them. Maybe they need some help somewhere. Maybe they've missed a point somewhere. Maybe right now they are leaning towards this temptation and desire, but if you remind them, they'll be awakened from it. And this is what Syeda Zehra is doing in this speech. She's trying to awaken these people who've fallen asleep, trying to enlighten their hearts after they've become dark again. And if that doesn't work, and then you move on to different ways of dealing with it. So I'm going to end it over here. This is what I wanted to discuss with you guys, and I wanted to show that Syeda Zehra alayhi salam also continued the path of her father, even though she didn't live for much longer because of what they've done to her. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, to make us realize the true reason why his religion was revealed to us, and to allow us to follow it with sincerity and piety, inshaAllah. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.